Hello and welcome back to Drive Driver Driven. I'm Humble and we're back in the garage again today. Quickly realizing how much of a British obsession I have with these kit cars, only because I've got them all lined out in the driveway here. But today's kind of special because we're going to be making big progress. And what I mean by that is visually big impact to putting the car together. Normally you wouldn't be this far or doing this piece now. I'm sort of doing it because A, I'm impatient, and B, I just want to get these pieces onto the chassis so that I don't have to dodge around them anymore and help free up some storage space or working space elsewise in the garage, because upcoming projects like wiring are going to need quite a bit of room, which you'll see when I get there. So today's task is we're going to put the body on the chassis. We're going to start with the side pieces. I've already done the passenger side to try and just dial down the process. And so I'm going to do the driver side here on camera, show you how I did it and kind of what's involved. So let me grab the GoPro and I'll show you kind of a quick rundown of the process. All right, like every good cooking show, here's the one that I've prepared earlier. So we have the side panel on the chassis, everything lined up nice. I used some black rivets that I got separately because I think that just pops off of the yellow quite a bit sharper. Same thing, top and bottom rail. On the inside, you can see a little bit here and a little bit here. It's mastic, or I use a Worth bond-in seal. It's actually the same stuff that I used on the Ultima and the MK. And what that does is that keeps the panel from rattling. We don't really care about weather sealing down in here. After all, it's an open top car, it's convertible, and in fact, what you should be doing is drilling a couple of holes in your floor pan just so that it drains properly. So on the panels here, to help reduce some of the rattling noises, you bond it to these chassis rails, and you can see some of that in there. So the end result is a nice dead panel. So I really like the way that turned out. You have to remove the front suspension in order to get the panel on, and so I had to do that. I've put the suspension back. What's great about that now is that I can actually torque everything to final spec once I give it a preliminary alignment. For the job today, what I have to do is actually remove the suspension and everything. And to make it easier, I removed both A-arms, I removed our ride height bar, and I just spun it out of this top rose joint. So I leave this connected because you can't remove the bolt here, not without a bunch of hassle. So I just spun this bar off, and then on the tie rod, I actually spun the tie rod end off, leaving just this inner piece so that this gated seal can slip through the bodywork, which makes it easier to put the bodywork on and off. Once I get all that pulled off, the chassis itself will be more or less prepped. You're going to wipe down all the tubes everywhere that you're going to put that sealant, which is, again, across here on the insides. And I will add that you want to do it on this side of the tubes. And we're going to put a kind of a fat bead down. And again, down the diagonals, down here across the bottom, and going all the way forward. When it came to these strips, I just put, I came down a little bit, and then I put a bead in the middle, a little dollop here, and then a little bit here in the middle between these two. And again, that's to help the panel seal against that and to prevent it from rattling in this area. When you do put the sealant down here, you do not want to get it too close to these holes, because those spacers need to seal flat up against this, and if that sealant is in the way, it won't sit flat proper and you'll have to dig it out. You want to try and avoid that if you can. Now onto the panel proper. I've got it propped up here. You want to be careful when you're working with these. There is a bend here in the middle, and if you don't support it at different levels like this, if you put too much force either down this way to open the panel, or if you're not careful enough and you crink it like a taco, it will break right here. So when they were painting the panels, they weren't too careful and it cracked. Thankfully, Phil and company, like, they did good on it. They repaired the panel, they got it back to me, they fixed the paint that was cracked there. So again, a huge shout out to Phil and all of their efforts, all the work they did. They did right by the job, so I can't thank him enough for, undergoing such a kind of a weird task. So on the other side of that is the panels themselves haven't been buffed out because of their fragile nature. So once they're on the car, Phil's actually going to knock them down that way that the panel's fully supported. He can kind of put some effort into it and we don't have to worry about the panels cracking again. So if you're doing the same thing that I'm doing and you're painting the panels, just be wary of that. I've got the panel itself cleaned up. As I mentioned before, these come pre-painted from the factory. Again, like one of the things that I'm kind of stoked about is the effort that the factory made to already put a black background on the panels. And what's great is looking at the panel from this side, you can see just how much it pops against the chassis. That's why I wanted a yellow chassis and I wanted these panels to have a black background. I was going to paint them regardless, and this is the vision in my mind, is that it really draws your eye to the chassis work inside of that space, versus if the chassis were black and the panel was black, the chassis is just lost. And if that's your goal, then that's, by all means, keep it that way. And then you might as well just cover up the chassis work with carpet or an interior panel or something like that. But for me, I wanted to highlight the chassis, its skeleton kind of nature. And with the yellow on black, it really, really does a good job of that. So we have the panel ready to go. I need to pull the front suspension off, which I'll do here shortly. And then over here on the bench, this is the sealant that I'm going to use. This is the Worth Bond & Seal. Oh, the one note I'll have here is when you cut down the tip, cut a wide hole on the tip, because you don't want to have to fight it. You want to lay down a thick bead, and you will use most of the tube in this job. So this is the one I use for the other side, and it's got a little bit left in there, but not too much. So if I have some small jobs, I can just knock it out with this. Otherwise, you'll probably want to start with a fresh tube so you don't have to switch in between. All right, with all that aside, I'll set you down into time lapse and we'll get cracking on the chassis. Out of the time lapse, you saw me put everything back together. We have the side panel on the car, and I think that's a good project for a single day. I thought about doing the rear tub as well, but I'm not done back there, and it's going to be easier for me to leave that off for the moment, so I'm going to. As for the side panel, not really much to it. As you saw, you lay down the bead, everything on the side of the chassis first. Throw the panel on. You got to be careful, and what I found is the easiest way to do it is sort of catch that bottom edge first and then rotate the whole panel up and over this top rail. You can kind of position yourself in the middle, use the holes for the roll cage, or just carefully with your hands over this top edge. That's why I didn't put any any goop or any sealant on the top ledge here is it helps reduce the mess, and it keeps everything behind the tubes. And you can see the end result here is that the tubes themselves stay pretty clean. So if I come around to this side and show you, it's much like the passenger side, how we kept everything nice and clean all the way through and all the way forward here. And then ditto for down underneath on the bottom. On the passenger side, I had to leave the clamps on in these locations overnight to help the bonding of the panel to the chassis, because there was a little bit of spring back on that side. On this side, when I had pulled the clamp off, it looked fine to me, but I'm just going to leave them on overnight to just cover the bases and make sure it's all good. A couple problems I did see are, I think, really bespoke to me and sort of my process. The repairs that I showed you earlier, it looked like it cracked here, and that's fine. This will be hidden by the cowl anyway, so I'm not too worried about that. And if I really cared, I could, fill that with some putty, and I have some paint that we could match it, but it's not going to matter. No real other bad spots. There was a little bit of squeeze out there at the bottom. If I care enough, I'll remove that, but it's not going to be an issue because I want to paint the inside of the wheel wells black anyway. I never really liked the body color wheel well, and keeping it black sort of hides everything around in here. The flip side of that is, again, the yellow suspension, everything is going to pop against it, which is also kind of what I'm after. So once everything is on and once we get the rear fenders done, I'm going to mask it off and paint just the area where the fender goes over black. And again, I think that'll just make it look really sharp. Another super pro move is when you're putting the front suspension on, make sure that you put the upper arm on backwards and see if anyone notices. Everything was going smoothly right up until that point, and then I had to fix that. Otherwise, again, the suspension's back on. We can do our final alignment and then tighten everything up in the front here down to final spec. So I'm actually really, really happy about that. So addressing the elephant in the garage, yes, I do have the motor here tucked away. It's getting some dress-up parts. No, it's not super shiny. That's a choice that I made. For what it's worth, Moto IQ and Mike did offer to paint the block and make it look shiny and pretty. And I just don't care enough. This isn't a super top-notch build. Well, that's a lie. This is a super top-notch build, but I didn't care enough to actually pretty up the block. This car is going to have a lot of patina in a very short amount of time. Such is the nature of the 7. I mean, if we look at just the 0 here, I mean, we've got a little bit of blowback from the exhaust. We've got pitting down on the body. Of course, the fenders just get absolutely destroyed on your first drive. So that's just the nature of 7s. That's what happens just after your first couple of drives. And to a point, that's one of the things I really like about the 7. It is a road car. It is a driven car. And it collects that patina and it rocks it with basically courage. Like it's just, that's the way they are. Yeah, you'll be seeing more of this soon enough, and more of the transmission, which I pulled out soon enough, because both of these have to go together, and I actually need to make a new engine mount. The gist of it is, on the driver's side, this mount, well, it doesn't line up because this is for a K20 and this is a K24, and these bolt hole positions are in a different place. And in order to, remedy this, we're gonna have to get everything together and in the car set the height and then recreate this plate here to mount on these 3 bolts and then weld everything up. So that's gonna be a process all on its own. Another part hiding out is I got my oil tank from ARE. And I think I pointed out previously, we also have a spin trick from ARE. Whether I pointed it out or not, we're gonna have to find a place for all this stuff. And now that the body panels are on, I'll know just how much room I have hiding kind of back in this area here. I think that's gonna do it for today. We got the body panels on the car. Those are gonna need to sit overnight anyhow for that bond and seal to stiffen up. I think we're gonna have a little more room now in the garage without those panels in the way that we can get to some of these larger projects. So I mentioned wiring before. Now you know with the engine and transmission, we're gonna have to make a new mount for that. So all this stuff is just coming together all at the same time, and I'm not really waiting on anything. So with the good weather that we're finally getting, now it's time to go and get this stuff done. So with that said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.